Drew attended Parsons School of Design in New York from 1981 to 82, and went on to receive his BFA in 1985 from Cooper Union, which is also in New York. He's shown his work extensively throughout the United States and internationally. Mr. Drew's work is in many major, I want to say this first. Mr. Drew, I had to cross off a lot of stuff because someone was controlling how I'm going to do this. Okay. Mr. Drew currently has a huge installation that will be up until May 10th at the Hammer Museum in Los Angeles. So I know a lot of you get down there, so you should try to go by to see it. In addition, Mr. Drew's work is in many major public art collections, including the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the Guggenheim Museum, the Tate in the United Kingdom, the St. Louis Museum, the Fogg Museum at Harvard University, the Hirshhorn Museum, and the Smithsonian Museum in Washington, D.C. There's many more collections that he's in, and I didn't even mention any of the places he's shown. But I think it's time to welcome and hear the thoughts of Leonardo Drew himself. Please join me in that.
I should tell you that I am not scripted, so as it comes flying out of my mouth, just have to take it. But it's always interesting. I see this photograph. It is just beginnings, and when I say beginnings, this is like I've been drawing all my life. Painting came later. Drawing was one of these kind of things that, I was like drawing on the wall, on the television screens, on whatever that was available, that was flat, and I could get up on it and draw. I was on it. My mother would beat the daylights out of me, kept getting me to stop doing that. The end of that is that I'm here talking to you now. That means she was not successful. So it's always interesting to note that I bridged a certain time in arts, meaning in the 80s, when I was coming up, my first exhibition, which was this work here, 1974, first exhibition at age 13. It was a type of work that I was making, got the kind of attention because of the facility. Marvel Comics, DC Comics, Heavy Metal Magazine back then, they were on me to sort of join they used to call them bullpens, or you join this club of artists who were pretty much manipulated by others to sort of like get you to sort of, this is how you should draw this character, and this is how this, and I had the opportunity to visit both studios, both DC and Marvel. That would have been in 1977. Interesting enough, DC had the Superman movie out with Christopher Reeve. Wow. And they were like, join us because we got this movie, you know what I mean? And the Marvels, they ain't worth nothing. And it was interesting mostly because it was like I had already seen Jackson Pollock. So they didn't know that I had been poisoned. And there was no way that I was going to be joining Marvel or DC, At the end of this is that the person that's speaking to you now is fully, on in terms of, okay, the potential of of having a facility, which is what I had in the beginning, up against that other thing that's beyond the surface. I call this a critified surface. Great to have this facility. Most artists now don't need this. You get computers, all kinds of programs or apps or whatever, and they just bypass. You don't have to be able to draw or paint now. It's like you can get that down, no problem, with the help of, computers. Beautiful. I'm not negating any of that. I don't think it's negative, bad, or anything. It's just, it's a different world. Back then, this is what was this is what art looked like in terms of you need to be able to do this, and then you can go into your abstractions. Then you were legitimized, I made the decision that once I had seen Jackson Pollock, that I needed to sort of get past the critified surface. There's something else beyond that, and I didn't know exactly what that was, but in the end, it was like, okay, how do I stop doing what I'm good at. I said, well, you just tie your hands. There's no more of this using your facilities sort of like, to access, your supposed better ends. It was no more painting, no more drawing. Find another way to sort of, make it happen. If you're creative, the idea is that it'll find its way. How did I know that at age, that would have been maybe 17, 18? But it was a must. And what I did was I said, okay, no more of this easy stuff. Find another way to create. So I started cutting out these black, images and paper and using ink to sort of like, I said, no colors. You're not allowed to paint. And no drawing. And what came with this was these shapes. Shapes became, like a full-on, really sculptures, without me actually even realizing that I had to make this leap into like, okay, a three-dimensional. Even to this day, if you look at my work, it looks three-dimensional, but it's informed by painting. It's on the walls, called wall sculptures or whatever I want to title things. We like wall sculptures. But the end of all this is that it was necessary for me to sort of like find out, I guess the word would be otherness. That thing that you necessarily can't really describe, but it is actually a vital part of the creative spirit. It's on the other, that thing that you are not necessarily absolutely sure about, but it's the very thing, it's like the carrot at the end of the stick that you need to follow. In order to sort of access, there's something else beyond you. And this is me trying to access that ignorantly, but at the same time trying to sort of gain enough knowledge and enough respect for what's possible. And I said, okay, maybe if I dealt with my fears, for all of us, it's the unknown, death. So what's on the other side of that? I didn't want to have to die in order to sort of find out. So I said, okay, maybe work with dead things. So you can see already in this, because you draw bones of critters, things that I picked up the street, what do you call it, roadkill, things to drag out of quicksand, like I didn't kill anything, but they were already dead. But the idea was to sort of like, you want to put your hands into, literally touch something dead, not be afraid of it, and actually come out on the other side of that, hopefully with something that was a part of hopefully a new language. And it does take a long time to find your voice, but I think it was at this moment that I began to sort of find out what I was made of. I'm not saying that I'm complete in that, but you need to have beginnings. And that's what I was saying in the beginning, is that you need to have beginnings. This was the breakthrough. And this is number 8. One of the only pieces that I own, mostly because I think no one wanted to own it because it's made up of dead animals. But the truth of the matter is that even to this day, I number the works. This is number 8. That was created in 1988. So it was almost like, I think 9, or was it 7 years, 7 years of darkness, where you're sort of like struggling to sort of find out what's on the other side of this journey, and going from being able to draw and having a facility, you're sort of like, you're wondering if you're actually made a wrong turn. The end of that is that when number 8 happened, it was like, okay, I think something just occurred, and I have to own this. And all throughout, like the works that came before this number 8 is made up actually of all the works that came before. So all of that, what you saw here, if you look close enough, you almost recognize parts of that in this piece. And even as I push forward, that seems to be a norm. It's like nothing is sacred in the studio. Dismantle things on a nonstop. Even for like the museums that I visit, they say to tell the guards whenever I come through, don't let him come close to the works because he has one. I don't go around into the museums and take things apart in the museums. You know what I mean? That's not what I do. But it's a reputation, is a part of the mystique that you don't have any respect for what you created. If that's not true about me, I actually, if it's in the studio, I will take it apart. Nothing's really ever finished if it's in the studio. So in fact, this piece being made up of actually parts of things that were already supposedly fully realized, for me, it's never absolutely finished. It's like it's always ongoing. Rusted wall piece. These are probably the only two pieces. There are never pieces that I own. These are probably the most, I would say, in the beginning anyway, the more important ones because they introduced at least the beginning of the vocabulary. So if we go back to number 8 and we jump to number 14, the similarities are just the fact that they're both, deceased material. One organic, and this is oxidized metal. I'm gonna move through these kind of quickly. You got a ton of slides, I'm telling you. But it's like, and you guys gotta let me know when I'm getting too long-winded. But like, this is actually, these works are from the show back in 1992. And I would say, if you were gonna say, well, there's an exhibition where you kind of, everything came together, it was probably back there in 92. I'm sorry, I'm looking too. Try not to do too many talks, mostly because the time is not there. But I always have the opportunity at the same time when I visit these images. It's like, you look at these things and it's like, it can be so exhausting because in order to create them, there was always this output of energy. And I'm still feeling it when I look at them and say, man, I don't want to go do that again, But it's a lot of bloodletting, and it's just because of the meticulous of the work, the slow buildup of material, the dedication to completely wiping yourself out in order to sort of realize. And we're not saying each one of these pieces are successful. I'm not even sure what that means in my language. I just know that all this is part of a journey. So almost like each one of these works is kind of like stepping stones to get someplace. And that someplace is not necessarily a place that you are fully, educated about, but you know that you need to sort of pull forward and go in that direction. I mean, I look at some of these works and it's like, okay, this piece, this thing, it's like I created it and it became this piece. So it is consistent that, you take like 1,200 boxes from a former piece, can very easily, and I'm glad that actually occurred because I look at this and it's like, okay, it was taken out of the studio at the correct time because otherwise I'm sure it would have became something else. Monstrosities. The rust monstrosities. Also interesting, I did a few talks today with some of the students, and you have the opportunity to sort of revisit through younger folks who are going through what you've been through. And I have to tell them that, okay, well, there are times when you need to sort of challenge your safety, there are these, safeties that we all sort of contrive in order to sort of get from A to B. And as artists, we call these things signatures, right? That means when I was making the rust works, people were like, he's that guy that does the rust works. And it was like, you could have parked it right there, And things would have been great, But me, being who I am, I need to care at the end of the day. So it's like, okay, this is the strength. In the same way that I saw drawing as a possible, avenue to sort of find some, success. But it was like, okay, I took drawing, turned it on his head, it became this. The rust works fell into that same sort of family of a safe place. And it was like, okay, what if I took away rust, And in the end, what ended up happening before, this is Merce Cunningham interrupting us, but okay. We'll get to what happened with rust in a second. I got a call from Merce Cunningham, and honestly, he was wondering if I would be interested in working with him on his next project, and I didn't know who Merce Cunningham was. So I was like, okay, give me a second, I'll get back to you, And of course, I got slapped because it's like, this is like Merce Cunningham. You have to work with him. I told him back, yes, sir. I'm ready to work, And he has an interesting formula, or had interesting formula. What he would do where he would ask an artist to do his thing. He does his thing, which is the phrasing, choreography. And he has a musician who comes in, he does the music, all separate from one another. Opening night, all these elements come together for the first time, and it's like, good luck. and I asked him, I said, like, what, how does that, and he says, it's all good. and I took that and ran with it. So there are definitely auteur artists out there who do absolutely understand that there's a door that you need to go through, right? And you go through that door, all things are possible. So he had that trust. He grabbed that and said, I need that too. I think someone like Stanley Kubrick also does the same thing. He has these 3 elements in his movies. They're disparate parts, but he brings them together to form this, but each one has worked. He realized that he could allow me to sort of do my thing because he had selected me as so I was a part of his toolbox, Perfect tools that could give you all of the, correct, and he knew this already. You need to leave that alone, Musicians, same thing. And I'm gonna do my thing, And it's like, let them come together. It was a beautiful experience, absolutely. And I could have made something that could have taken on that stage, and they wouldn't have to deal with that, So it was just that kind of a trust that I thought was really just fantastic. Okay, that's, look at these. This is one of the only times that I actually found objects. And I should tell you that actually I would avoid using objects because they already, and each object is already embedded a layer of history. And I think it's, if you can use it, it's great, but for me, it's like too easy. So I need to be able to become the weather. Take something, turn it on its head, put it this way, turn it that way, let it pull me this way and that way, and hopefully on the other side of that, we'll have a coming together. And I think that's what the weather does with things. It does it to us, to our bodies. And here with these bits and pieces of objects, I was just trying to sort of build a composition, going right back to Jackson Pollock. And these are really just, here. Just remember that I talked about that. The white things have everything to do with what we were talking about earlier, which is the rust pieces. I said, what if I took away my strengths? What if I just use white paper? What would be the end result of that? The end result is that once you find your voice, once you find it, any material, whatever you end up inevitably touching, it will find its way. It's you. So that little experiment, which is what you're seeing now, whatever is at the base of my work, it's just that. It's going to come out. So the material is like actually an aside, so to speak. That looks like sienna with a monstrosity underneath the beautiful ceiling. That's not the Titanic. Let me know if I'm going too fast. This monstrosity actually was created. You got all these little remnant parts. I learn from all things. People come to the studio, and a lot of times they'll see things that I'm clueless about. People are coming through and they'll pick up things off the floor and say, can I have this? So yeah, sure, we can take that. And you take it home and they frame it, and you look at it and go, what, how did that happen? How did you end up with this? But they knew, they saw something. And I got smart. I say, in the end, I said, we're giving away like things on the floor. These little remnant things that fall off, whatever. So it's like I started making a sort of catalog. So this hieroglyphics was started from just all the materials I had used over the years. That's what this piece is, really. It's just like mass materials. And that one actually got a glass wall, which I did not write off on. It's like, that's too deadly and dangerous. But this company came up with this space age glue, and they said, it can be done. I said, I'm not gonna get sued. So I will not sign off on works on glass, but these things are stuck up, and I don't think anything has fallen, and almost 15 years. Nothing's fault. No one's been decapitated, so. But the potential is there. So. But yeah, black monstrosities. Yeah. People always bring up Louise Nevelson, and I think that's all good. I mean, I don't think no one's ever been like, how do you say, you know, we don't leave out anybody when describing my work. So, from Jackson Pollock, Louise Nevelson, I love them all. You know.
What size is that?
It's big. It's that thing is got to be like 15, maybe 15 feet tall, and almost just as wide, if not more. Yeah, it looks like it could be more. Yeah, I guess like it's at least 15 feet tall. Yeah, but it's a monster of a thing. Yeah. Little black thing. A white one. Yeah. It's like revisiting these things, and it's like, and I look at it and I say, boy, I wish I was that good. Now, I have gotten so tired. I look at these things and like, oh my goodness, it's like, can I keep up? It's like, and it has very little to do with a demand in terms of your outside world, like saying we need like X amount of works. You know, I definitely beat galleries up on that, meaning like you don't tell me, you know. And it's not that I necessarily have to say that, they know that. You know? I'm still projectish, you know, being born in the projects. You know? But yeah, this is, I like this crazy thing. I see, a lot of times I see this on Instagram because folks do their little selfies. It's at the Perez Museum, and I would love to visit it. I haven't been to see it, but it's like I get a chance to sort of see people standing in front of it doing things. And a lot of these works are done. This is totally disrespecting other works in the studio. This piece is made of at least 3 different parts, and I wish I had the other. Well, you can kind of see it here. Is that the laser pointer? No? Do we get a laser pointer? No? I point. This is one piece down there. That's another one up there. And that's, they call it the tongue, you know, which is this thing, that thing. And it's like, wow, it's like, it started off, whoa. Okay. All right. I'm like that. Let's see. Thank you. Can you guys see that?
Yeah.
Okay. The tongue. Ooh. This also controls the machine. Okay. Here we go. The tongue. This is one piece, and this is another. And you know, I remember getting a call from the Brooklyn Museum. This piece is like, they say, well, they were looking for it. And I swear it was on the table saw getting ready to get cut down again. So nothing is actually sacred. And this is not bad. I'm not listening, speaking to artists, you know, who are here. In order to sort of get through that door, you need to actually take a level of, put your ego aside, allow, you know, that other thing to sort of take over, which is total trust in the unknown. So you're gonna have to actually push yourself through that door in order to, and that means taking something that you think is, you know, beautiful and everyone loves it, and believe me, if it's still around you and it's still speaking to you, you should just follow it. Let it take you. It's gonna grab you by the nose and pull you through. And it's all good. It's all good. It's very satisfying. For me, anyway. I mean, for the gallery, it's not satisfying, but for me, it's super satisfying, you know? Oh, this thing is like a catalog of, you guys remember that from the very beginning? Tumbling box thingy? Yeah, rust thing there. This box piece. All these are past works. This is like the family tree of dead things. But materials just keep changing. I mean, here we are again with aluminum, and that piece is dead, gone. Became a bunch of pieces. He survived. And I'll tell you, color. I don't know if you guys know this, but I don't think there's been too much color since the very beginning, right? Okay, from painting, I say no more drawing, no more painting, and then all of a sudden you find yourself, going through this desert, right? And you're hitting different, what is the word, mirages? Or things, or, I guess you hit spots where there's water, and you drink from that. But inevitably, you have to take the time to sort of go backwards, to sort of try to remember things. Drawing is only now starting to come up. I'm 58 now, and I stopped drawing when I was probably, I think I was 19, 20, that's a long time, right? On sabbatical. And color was just the same, it was fell in the same box. So no more of that shit. So it was like, okay. It's now, it came out with a bang, literally. It's like, color is happening. Yeah. I mean, look at that. What, that is ridiculous. I look at that, it's like, comic books. They come back to haunt me. But this is, yes. And this is all recent. We're talking, these are since March. And I will tell you, honestly, I struggled. It was kind of at gunpoint, honestly. I had been going back and forth to China, working with artisans there, and a place called Zhengzhen, which is like ground zero for porcelain. Beautiful time, 4 years going back and forth and working with these guys. They didn't speak any English and I didn't speak any Chinese. So, but in the end, it was a beautiful, beautiful experience. I'd love to go back, but I think there are things going on there I have to hold off. But the trick in all this is that I didn't realize it, but all the glazes that I was working with, pushing through my body, and also the porcelain itself, the whole alchemy of actually putting these things together started. How do I say? You don't necessarily have to call on these things. If you're living them, they now become a part of you. You can go on with your life. And if you're an artist, your life is your work. So it's going to find its way through you without you calling on it. So it wasn't like I have to say, it's time for me to work with color, and this is how I'm going to do it. When I said at gunpoint, what happened was, back in March, I was asked to do an exhibition with the new gallery. And I was, no way am I doing this, because it's got, too many other things I have to be responsible for. And I don't have anything for you. It's like you're talking the next 3 weeks, something like that, to produce something. And it's like, you have to get a reputation of being some kind of crazy superhuman, and they think that you can pull it off. I didn't know that I could, but I actually did. And I said at gunpoint. So it was like, okay, a good friend of mine said, you need to do this, and we can do this, and this to make it happen. We can borrow works and stuff, but we need to do this show. And I thought about just their commitment to actually making this happen. And I said, okay, I got 3 weeks. I think I can do this. And I killed myself. But the end result was this monstrosity. And it has been, this is the same configuration as the piece that's at the Hammer. It's been a kind of a godsend, because all that information that I had taken in China, and color, which is not, as you notice, has not been a part of my vocabulary for a very, very long time, all of a sudden made itself known. In ways that it was almost like being pulled by the nose by something, another force. And this explosion happened. Now you can say that almost metaphorically, something happened, an explosion happened in me, and actually visually it became that.
I'm convinced I don't follow, I like to have the wherewithal to be able to follow Instagram and all of this new stuff. but the fact is, us old folks, we can't keep up, and we're doing our best. But it's like, look at this. It's like, who is, they're inspired. So it's like, okay, just get out of the way. It's their day. They're having a good time, and your work is. I mean, it's unreal. Who would think of this shit? I'm looking at it and I go like, I wish I had thought of that. It's like but this is inspired. It's like crossing over into another place. And I mean, it's like, if I was like straight up here, it's like, say, you completely sold out. It's like you're like, you're on CBS and they're doing talks about. I mean, it's like, okay, what happened was this very same piece. This anchor, Anthony Mason, right, sees this from outside. And it came about honestly. He's like, it wasn't a publicist going out, and he comes in and he said, oh my goodness. And so now you're entering into pop culture. I mean, so it's like, we're the small pond of folks, artists. And, and it's beautiful, but we're apart. We're not, part of. It's not like we don't necessarily. It's highfalutin, and there we are. And the end result of this is that when they get a hold of you, and you start to make sense, you also want to question you, if that makes sense. It's almost like I've been on this journey, and now the real world's creeping. The real world is creeping in. They're coming. And it's like, okay, so how serious is my work now? And it's like, they're sitting on it, chilling on it. You know what I mean? It's like you scratch it. What the hell did that happen? In my studio, it's like you're working, you're making, you're bleeding, and it's like, and the end result is regular folks are getting it. And then you have to double check yourself. And then you move forward. I think it's okay if they love it. I think it's all right. I didn't sell out yet. Maybe on the verge. But the interesting part in all this is that we have this struggle as artists within us, where we do understand the hierarchy. Which is a prettified surface. There's cute art. There's craft. And how do these things come together? At what point do we sort of embrace all arts? Because keep in mind that I came from a place that you were considered an illustrator. Fine arts over here. And when I was in school, that was made apparent. They would say, they would say, the teacher used to say, which is Leonardo's work up here? And the kids would say, that one, we know that's his. And they said, why do you believe that's Leonardo's work? And they would say, it seems to be more advanced. And he said, seems to be. I absolutely understood that, and I was not in disagreement because I was there actually to find out what is this prettified surface and how do I deal with this. The end result is that you can encompass all of it, but your mindset, your absolute mindset, has to sort of allow you to reach spiritually another place, and that means continue to open these doors. Don't be afraid of I have to go through the door of illustration or the prettified surface to access my better ends. And how do I add to this larger language? Because it's a collective. It's not just like I'm in a vacuum creating. It's all of us out there, one interlinked to the other. So when I saw Jackson Pollock, bam, he gave to me. You know what I mean? And right now I'm passing that very thing on to you guys. So it's never a time when you shouldn't be learning or unlearning. You know what I mean? Once that information goes in, that should absolutely become a part of you. And now you're on you should take that and hopefully move forward. That is a philosophical. This is not about art right now. This is a life, this is a philosophy about life. So I think that you continue to remove these veils so that we can sort of push forward, not just as individuals, but as a collective. So I continue to sort of believe at least that I'm adding on to the young lives. It's so cute. And the sign said, don't climb. It's over there. I was there instigating. So I would say, you know, okay, I make these things, you know, like, and they could take the weight, and the kids were loving it, and the mothers like, get down, get sauces, you know. But this is new. When I say new, as in a new, you know, okay, if they're, you know, I said in the studio, I walk across these things, and I was hoping that I built them shabby enough so that they would kind of disintegrate in a way so that it becomes even more weathered and beautiful. And I mean, too well because they never did fall apart. But I, you know, hoping in the next venue that and continue that will kind of find their level of deterioration and find their new self. Colored sand, um, uh, and colored sand and plaster and the aluminum base to give it. There was undulations. Interesting enough, that these shapes that you see in like the Empire State Building, right? I didn't necessarily think about the Empire State Building, but if you ask a child to draw like a building, I always thought like an Oz or a metropolis, you know, like in terms of these stupas. Because if these things were in India, there would be stupas. They wouldn't be the Empire State Building. So I think as long as these things continue to sort of move around, they will probably find another self, you know? That's in China. Machu Picchu. So all these places actually lend themselves, Redwood, Walk the Giant. Yeah, and I survived that. Yeah, the tree monster. But yeah, all this is just information on just how you could actually place yourself in we're receivers of information, we're antennas. And I think that like in the end, where you end up maybe placing yourself, it will go through your body and end up finding its way out. So I look at that and I know that I've been stealing, appropriating, borrowing from all these places. Back in the day, pushing a bale of cotton down Broadway. It's all studio stuff. As in, it looks kind of sad, but it wasn't that bad. But it does look. I think that's the last thingy. Thank you guys. Have you got any questions? Well, I did say I'm not scripted, right? I did. Did I say that? Okay. All right. So hopefully I said something. Look what I'm back there. What the? You should have got paid. Oh, my goodness. Oh, that's a good question. Studio actually is in Cypress Hills, Brooklyn, but I've had studios in San Antonio, Texas, Washington Heights, and New York. I mean, you know, where I find myself. In the end, I made these works mostly. You can actually see that piece. They're in increments of 24 by 24 mostly. So that means I could, without help, assistance, I could put up a piece, and they're all like these grids. You wouldn't know that if you were looking at them. Like you look at that piece there, which is the piece at the Perez, it's made up of that, what I just described, just squares that come together, flat plates. And it's just an easy way. You know, people talk about these grids being a minimalist device, and I just tell them it's a device of practicality, you know. It's just, you know, I need to be able to like get the thing out of I made pieces where I couldn't get them out, you know what I mean? And people would come over and say, how you gonna get this out of here? I said, you know, and, you know, but the truth of the matter is, you know, if you want to be responsible, you better make it so we can get it out of there, you know. Yeah, so, did I answer all the questions? That was good. Is that good? Okay, I can hear you. Mm. Mm. Oh, that's all good question. I See? Legitimacy. Did I say I wasn't legitimate? Oh, I say that. Okay. This is all brand new. I mean, because, like if you're, taking a lot of time to sort of make work, it's difficult sometimes to sort of pay attention to the real world and how things are moving along. So when I woke up, all of a sudden there was Instagram. And you know what I mean? And all these other means of sort of like, people were getting their, their selves known through, the World Wide Web, and it's fantastic. It's a new day. If you were to tell your parents back in the day that I'm going to become an artist, they disown you, But in the 80s, I think it's when it kind of became, you could do this. Schnabel, Basquiat, Herring, David Sally. I mean, all these guys were like making mad loot, creating. And it just kind of kicked the doors down and for parents to say like, okay, it's okay to do this because I won't have to take care of you for the rest of your days, So it's always interesting to note that a lot of us who are studying the arts right now are reasoning for why we're in it. It's always interesting to sort of ask each artist, and get an idea like how are they seeing their future. I mean, when I came out, I was butt naked, so that means it was like you're on your own, Mother, that was all good. It's like hey, I don't have nothing to do with that, You're on your own, and it's like you're an addict. You need to do this, and it has very little to do with, it's going to be all good, as long as I say 24/7 of this could be fantastic. How do I do this 24/7? So you come up with ingenious plans and ideas on how to get your time, to own your time. A lot of us buy into the idea that we get these jobs and then the next, 65, we get to retire. And believe me, you ain't got enough juice to do anything at that time. It's been stolen away from you. So you got to devise a plan as an artist to not fall into that, a situation. Being, how do you say, complicit in your doom. I mean, you got to figure it out. You got to figure it out, man. It's like, it's your responsibility to sort of say, okay, how am I going to get to do this? And with more time into that than into this other stuff, which is conventional, And I for me, what I did was, I said, okay, you got to have to get a job, and you got to save enough money to take 2 years off. And of course, while I was doing that, I was also making work, but it was also on the hustle and put money away. The end result of that was that I never did look back. That's 38 years ago. And I have not seen the man. I don't ever want to see him. You know what I mean? It's been 24/7 of me just going, and it does spoil you because that means if you join the gallery, they can't tell you anything because you already know how to survive without them. So that means that the work that you're creating in the end is the kind of work that you kind of feel, and if you want to question it, it comes from you, not from an outside source. So that when I look at these Instagram things, the colors and all that, it's like I'm asking you guys right up front in front of you, I'm saying, did I go too far? What's going on with that? And I don't feel guilty about it. It's like it's what it is. It's like, oh, I can address that honestly without any the gallery is not guiding me so that you should colors is not good, or if they say cheerleading and say colors are good, and I said no, actually I want to do something else. Once you figured out how to make it happen without them, it's the best possible place you can be in, and that's where your real genius has to kick in. So figure it out, and it's all. If I did it, you can do it. Yeah. Long-winded. We got. Mm-hmm. Hey. I'm going to be talking to you tomorrow. Yep. Uh-huh.
Earlier today, in the intro to critical theory discussion section, we watched a part 21 of
Hmm.
You said that you are the weather in your studio when you went to the cultural study. The question is this, in your language, how are you the weather in your studio?
What that means is, the nature of nature. We're not separate from that. We're not above it. We're not necessarily below it. We're a part of it. So that means you should be able to channel that. No problem. Absolutely no problem. But a lot of us we have to strip away layers in order to access it. And I'm not saying, like I figured it all out, but I'm just saying at least I have a map on how it's possible for me. And it just means that I'm not separate from nature. It's nature of nature. I am it. And so are you. But it's just, when do you start to reconnect to it, and allow it to be, Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, I don't mind giving away secrets because I almost kill myself having to figure out a lot of this stuff, and probably better if I just tell you so that you don't kill yourself. So like trying to sort of like figure out the weight of things up against, like, say, hanging something, that's really big and thinking that you're going to get away with it just using glue. These are issues that you need to experiment, study, and then sort of like responsibly, especially if you have others around, you want to make sure you don't wipe anybody out. So I make gigantic things, and even when I create the piece in the park, I mean, then you come into a whole other realm of responsibility. Like people wanting to walk on things, and you got to make sure you don't create landmines. You know, so I think inevitably, and really in the end, it's just it's experimenting. Like, okay, like when I use certain mediums like matte mediums and stuff like that. There's a reason why we use that instead of like say like an Elmer's glue. Elmer's glue is good for a lot, can be good, or Type 1 can be used for a lot of things. But understand that these things are tested only up to a point, and they have a tendency to sort of break down in water. You know, so matte mediums don't do that. They're acrylic, and they have a tendency. I use some of them and set them underwater for like at least a year, and they boom come out still stuck together. Those are experiments of like or things that I found out by happenstance that have assisted me in order to to realize a lot of these work, understanding how to put things together so that at least in the person's mind who's acquiring it, they feel it's permanent. And I always tell people none of this shit is permanent. It's like, but they don't want to hear that. So you kind of veer into, you're gonna be all right, you know, but you do take some responsibility at least. I mean that the piece, the rug piece that was in the park, people are like, oh man, it would be great. I said, well, I don't really feel that it could take the outdoors indefinitely, and they don't want to hear that. So you have to invent now another language so that they can hear you and get what they need out of it. It's not, you don't lie. You just tell them, there's, that this piece is actually absolutely connected to, all the things that you want to happen. It's going to happen that way. We're going to put it outside, and it's going to be all good. And they say, and you're honest with the art, but you have to also let the people know that you just channeled into a philosophy, and you bought into the philosophy, and that's good. You should understand that nothing is permanent. That's what really the philosophy is. There's nothing, and none of this is permanent. We're all gone. Mm-hmm. get you. What's up, honey? Number 8. Oh, you're gonna tell me make dead things. hmm Well, keep in mind those in the beginnings and or the very things that introduce you to the processes of decay. I know that there's when I found this voice, I don't necessarily joke when I say it's a dark. Because people say like, okay, what is your base? What is your voice? Or I say it's dark. And I said, okay. And they said, okay, that's like a depressing place. Or I said, what are you going to do? Some sort of exorcism in order to sort of realize this otherness, in order to sort of In fact, I think that this is a dual situation that's in all of us. We need to sort of have this balance, which is yin and yang, And inevitably, if you're going to make serious work, then you better sort of know that there's otherness, there's something else, and we can call it dark, but there's the light and there's the dark. So there's that balance that has to happen. When I find success, the most successful pieces actually strike that balance, and it's just being honest with what it is. And when it's not successful, it's when I haven't probably put enough into it or allowed myself to be involved enough. If you find yourself like sort of creating, I always call them 7 crying babies in the studio. That means I'm working 7 things, rotating, juggling 7, and they're all screaming for attention. Inevitably, someone's gonna like not feel that they got enough, And I think that's where inevitably I need to sort of hopefully be fair-minded with the 7 crying babies. Let them be a part of or find themselves. They can assist each other in finding themselves. So like when we look at the dead things, for instance, in the beginning, they are the very elements that allow for the things that happen thereafter. You don't see, it was not necessary for you to use those sensational materials anymore. No more dead animals. Only did that one time. It was such a, like cathartic experience that inevitably it informed everything thereafter without actually even introducing. Like when Mercer approached me and, I did this piece, he was saying, there are dead things in that. And there was it was just a gigantic version of number 8. But it had the emotional pull without all the sensational material. So this is what you inevitably end up, once you sort of open that door, it actually, you get from it, So the weight and emotions of those objects are still, even to this day, in the very light work, like the paper work. And all the work, they have that. When I opened the door, found my voice. That makes sense? What's up, man? Oh, way back in the day. Yeah. Uh-huh. Well, that piece in particular, you have to start the fabric workshop. And let's go back. See, I can do that quickly. Wait. Can I do that fast? Going back? Let's see. Ooh, I did something else. Yeah. But the idea is, I need to see that one of the white pieces. But what I'm getting to is that the cast paperwork in the beginning, anyway, I was working with the team at the fabric workshop, and what they did was they worked on the stability of the material. That one, right? Put that one on. Were you there? Oh, yeah. Well, it took 3 years. Well, what happened here was I need to sort of, not work with something that was familiar, that your signature. So you challenge that by actually erasing all the things that are familiar, will be familiar stamps or whatever. That's his work. So this was that. Even though I don't think this piece was very successful, what ended up happening was I took this very same piece and I turned it into that, crushed them and put it into these glass vitrines because they make them solid so that they became like plaster and visually. Because if you saw it in the museum, you would think it was plaster because that you can't go around touching it in the museum. So it's in the end, I had to take 3 years off, meaning where I didn't do any showing, just made this stuff, and what came about was this piece. Now, if you look at that, and you look at this, it's like night and day, right? That's paper. That's paper. You know what I mean? It's the visuals on it, then the emotional, aspect of all the things. When you look at that, I couldn't make that connection with something that I would have created. All right, there's nothing in there that they can be lovely objects, but that's exactly what they are, plaster objects. Even when I crushed them, I still don't think it. But this says, if we were to relate this to number 8, which is the piece with all the dead animal parts, they're like one and the same. And there's a reason for that. Because, like I said, once you sort of like open this, it's like it reveals itself. When the door opens, it reveals itself. So this was successful because if I were to talk about the emotional pull of the work, it doesn't have anything to do with the materials that you choose to work with. Once you found your voice. Once you find your voice, boom. Yeah. What was that? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's Wayne Thiebaud talking, baby. we'll get you. We're gonna get you. We're gonna get you. Yeah. I gotta hear this. No, don't leave. Go ahead, Wayne. Mm-hmm. No. You said something. We got a boxing match here. Mm-hmm. Interesting. You're absolutely right on all fronts. But one of us has to do that, to do it, if you know what I mean. Meaning, get away from traditions, safeties, and signatures. And I'm not married. I don't have kids. But though with certainty, I'm sure there would have been a different trajectory if I would have had that kind of responsibility. So when I think of what I need to sort of add to art, it comes without as much compromises. It's like, say, okay, you can do this. You can twist and turn this that way. And the consequences, no one's going to really suffer from your, but maybe the world, in some way the art world, hopefully will get something out of this meandering that I'm doing. You know what I'm saying? But I think that, someone has to take that chance. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying I'm brave to do that. It's just that I'm just in a position, where I don't have the same kind of responsibility. I can be the fool, and I can kind of like say, I did this yesterday, but what is it today? And maybe I can do this with it. You know what I mean? I can do this. So there's the idea that there could be within this one journey a continuum. If that makes sense, a continuum that's an additive to a much larger language, which is our language. As artists, we can see that as like different bodies doing it, but if it comes from one body, asking questions and having doubts at the same time, sort of, you questioning this. It's like when I started off drawing, we wouldn't even have this conversation if I stayed with the drawings and the paintings. You would be, yeah, he's better off. You know what I mean? Working with Marvel, they're doing really well. But the end of all this is that, I'm still asking questions. Those very same questions that I asked at that time are the same questions that I'm asking now. And that's the crux of it all. It's like that is absolutely, yeah. At least I'm just telling you honestly what I'm going through, and it's not that you're old-fashioned, I'm new wave or anything like that. It's just two different, no wrong here, two different trajectories, and you have added a great deal, and I'm just attempting. To add to this overall language. It's our language, It's our language, right? And I just want to be, right there punching with you, baby. Mm-hmm. Let's do it. I bet I can still do it, baby. Oh my goodness. This is great. Thank you, Wade. Thank you. We did not forget you.
So I was curious about your process a little bit as you're talking about the people where you started showing people Instagram back. You kind of questioning yourself, but how much of that really that your words started going more environmental and having a space that the people can enter into the artwork versus classwork or museum type work that starts to
I like that question really because it does get to the heart of matter, and like you got kind of like the other I have to kind of slide over. You know what I mean? Even if you're a vehicle for creating, you're responsible only up to a point because the viewer is complicit in completing the work. Whether if they're physically adding their bodies to it, like now they're doing that. I always thought they were complicit. I mean, I number the works for that very reason. The works are all numbered because it gives the viewer an opportunity to sort of find themselves in the work. They don't necessarily have to come to me or read the wall text or anything. They can stand right in front of the work and get beat up or whatever. You know what I mean? But the end of all this is that I end up learning too. So there's an education, is a fair trade-off. I've had situations where, like when I was at the Hirshhorn, security guard is standing, he gets to sit in front of this thing like all day, and I'm sure it's painful, but he actually found, like I can actually talk about this work. So he would grab groups of people would come in and he became like a tour guide and he would tell them what the work is about. And I just happened to be there as this was happening. And so I'm just listening and I'm learning all this stuff about, I hadn't thought of that, and I hadn't thought of that either. And so I stepped to him and said, where'd that come from? And you know what he said? The artist told me. So, all good, all good. Thank you. She's watching out for me. Uh-huh. Absolutely, because what I ended up learning when people were, I wouldn't say stealing things out of the studio, those rules, that there's microcosms, worlds within worlds, right? So you can have one of these elements fall off, and within that, you still have the overall feel of a very large piece. That was no ingenious plan. It just kind of like happened because you're putting all this juice, all this energy into these microcosms. And like I said, when people were taking them out, framing them, that was when I realized it. It wasn't like I realized it, like when I was making these big things, but there was those remnant parts, right? Still had the juice, the big juice, you know what I mean? And that had to be given to me, and I, took it and ran with it, So yeah, small things are definitely absolutely happening now, and I'm fully aware of it. But it's an education that came later. That makes sense. Yeah, over here. How am I holding up? You all right? Comfortable. No, I think I was saying that all along, that we always challenge the comfort zone. At least I need to do that. Surprisingly, the gallery's still hanging. You know what I'm saying? Even though I keep doing that, and you can call that hot and cold because you're always sort of investigating the next, and iteration, and spiritually trying to sort of like be honest with your journey. We're only here for a short time, so it's just a lot of times just a matter of applying yourself. I feel it's just always ongoing. So no, there's no that would be actually something that gives. It doesn't take, it gives. That makes sense. I can't answer more questions, My man.